Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the internet world. This is J-Bo with another video for you. I think this one will be kind of interesting because a lot of people own these Heritage Rough Riders and also single action revolvers. And there's not much difference between these and, let's say, a Uberti or a Cimarron or any other single action copied from the 1800s, a Colt clone. And while these are just 22s, the reason why I'm doing this today is this one here is just to show you something and to talk about. I'm going to do something after the video's over. But for the video, I have been having light hammer strikes with this pistol, which just stands to reason because that is normal when you have many rounds through a single action revolver. There is a spring in here that the hammer rests on, and that spring actually causes the hammer to snap with a certain force. And when that starts getting metal fatigued and bent a certain way from use, the hammer has a weak strike. So typically, if you have a weak hammer strike on your rounds that you can physically notice when you take the shell out that didn't fire and you look at it and say, you know what? That doesn't look like a very serious strike. And then you take that same round and you put it in a different pistol and it fires right away. Then there's something going on, usually. And I was getting about 2 out of 6 misfires last weekend with this. And it had been starting to act up a couple weeks before. We go every weekend. And I shoot this every weekend. I have for a couple, 3 years now. So it has had literally hundreds and hundreds, probably a couple thousand rounds, maybe even more than that. I have no idea. I didn't count. I just know that I shoot the heck out of this a lot, as you can tell. And so parts wear out. I've already replaced the sear for the bolt stop and the trigger. I've replaced the firing pin. And that's the other thing I wanted to tell you about is I didn't need to replace the firing pin in here, but I replaced it anyway, mainly because I wanted to learn how to do it. And there is a pin in here. You see that pin? Basically, you just knock that pin through, and there's a little apparatus inside here, which you can see that. And it pushes, that's the firing pin that the flat hammer face hits. Then it strikes the shell in the cylinder. And there's a little spring in there. So this feels nice and springy, so I know that's not the problem. But that could be a problem when you have a problem, I guess is why I'm mentioning it. But I already know it's going to be the hammer spring because this one has never been changed. And they sell all these parts on the Heritage Rough Rider website for really cheap. So it's real easy to get parts for this. A lot easier now than when they first started making them or making them available on their website. So, and I'm not going to do the speed up the film thing. I've already checked these to make sure they're empty, but, you know, proper protocol on the internet. Yeah, you get to see each one. Empty, empty, empty. All right, this firearm is safe. Safety's on. That's the safety on these. That's off, and that's on. So, and you can see that sounds like a really good strike, but it really isn't because it's evidenced by when you're shooting it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this all apart anyway because I want to check everything and clean everything. So I'm just going to go ahead and take this apart, and you can watch me do that. And I'm using a flat-headed bit that I bought from Brunel's. And the reason why I got that is it's for smithing, and it is perfectly squared. And a lot of regular flathead screwdrivers aren't, and you end up chewing up your screw heads and stripping your screws. And this will go a long way into not doing that. Plus it's magnetized, and I will argue it's a little too magnetized, because sometimes that actually fights against me. But you take out your screws. Everybody knows how to do that. I should actually take the cylinder out first and take the base pin out. Take your cylinder out, put it aside. And the other thing that can cause misfires is dry firing your 22 pistol and the edge of the firing pin hits the rim of where your casing goes in, and then it wears out the outside, and it will only do it on one spot, wherever it is on these openings where it hits. So that's why you're not supposed to dry fire most 22s. Now the Ruger Wrangler, they say you can dry fire that. So again, I don't trust it, and just out of habit, I just don't do it. But Heritage Rough Rider, you're not supposed to dry fire these, just to let you know. And they do have snap caps, 22s. They're made out of aluminum, and those, you'll see when you strike those that why you don't dry fire them by where it strikes on there. So let's continue on and unscrew this. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to replace the hammer spring in this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flex it backwards and try to get it a little bit more spine back in it, because it's not much weaker, and I know I'm going to have to get one. And I could cannibalize this pistol and take the one out of here and put it in here, because this is my favorite pistol I like to shoot. But I don't want to do that. So anyway, I like experimenting with things. So I'm going to leave those 2 screws in there because I'm going to be poking those out in a minute. But you will see this little spring. This is a little spring that sits in here with a little pin that you don't want to lose. And that's for the loading gate. The loading gate will come right out. You give it a little turn like this, and you can pull it right out, and you can see how that locks in there, and you can see how dirty this is. So I have to clean all of this stuff, and so that's why I'm taking it apart. So now we have the apparatus in here, which is the sear spring. You see it's a little Y. It's a little Y spring that screw holds on, and it does this all the time. And because it does that all the time, eventually the metal will break. So you need to buy spare parts for your Heritage Rough Riders or any single action revolver, because you are going to break your stuff. So we're going to take out this little screw. And see how that's magnetized? Isn't that nice? Take the little spring out, magnetized. That's filthy. It's just a little bit of rust, corrosion, no big deal. I shoot black powder revolvers, and every time you go shooting, you have to take it apart like this and clean everything, because that will rust all your parts. It's very corrosive for black powder. But the stuff they use today, that's okay. So we're going to take out these screw here for this trigger. And it actually threads through the bolt stop. Now, on a regular single action like a 357 or 45 long Colt, typically there will be an extra screw. One for the bolt stop, one for the trigger, and one for the hammer. Everybody has a different design, and they will also have a different hand and pawl design. Most of them are about the same. I'll get to that in a second. So we took the trigger out, and now this bolt stop should just come out. Oh, it fell out the other way. That's odd. But that's what that looks like. This is a split spring, more or less. You don't want to go squeezing that or adjusting that, because this has to clear a little raised spot on the hammer when it clicks and sets. And if this isn't filed properly, your hammer won't set properly. In fact, your cylinder could lock up, and your bolt stop will stop your cylinder from turning, and you have a new problem. So basically, you don't want to go rearranging how things are. If it's happy and it was working fine, don't go flexing, bending stuff, and just clean it. So now we're going to unscrew this screw right here for the hammer. And these pistols are so much fun, and they do require some maintenance. It's old technology, 1800s. And I really like the idea that they did this. So This right here is nothing different in most single action revolvers. The Ubertis, however, have a different spring and hand design, which in my opinion is better than these old-fashioned ones. Now this will just slide right out of there, and now this is all disassembled. There's nothing left in here to lose or fall out. Put that aside. Then we have this hand and spring. Now this is the part right here that grabs the teeth on your cylinder and rotates it when you cock your hammer. So that works in tandem with your hammer. You cock it back, and then this slides up in a slot, and that spring puts pressure on here to push this against the cylinder and rotate your cylinder every shot. And your trigger sits in one of these teeth, both of them, and one of these will be your half cock and the other one is fully cocked. And so these have to work in tandem. And this little raised round spot right there is the spot that your bolt gizmo slides over and clicks behind it. That's why it has a bevel on it. So this will slide over it, spring loaded, and then when it gets past it, one of the legs on here springs and hooks on the edge of that round piece, and then that locks your hammer back ready to fire. And like I said, if this isn't correct, or one of these break off, your cylinder is going to lock up and not turn. You pull the hammer and it won't do anything. So everything in a revolver has to work in tandem perfectly with one another. So anyway, we got that apart. Now we're going to get to the main event. And I'm going to knock these screws out. Usually these screws just fall out when you don't want them to, and they're not going to because it is so dirty. It's filthy. There we go. You won't lose that on the floor though. Alright, I just knocked those out. We'll put those over here. These parts are all filthy, full of gunpowder residue. So right here, you can see that is the end of the hammer spring. And the hammer has a little wheel. Well, actually, this doesn't. Okay, if you had a Uberti or a bigger caliber pistol, there would actually be a wheel inside here that you lubricate, that spins, and it rides on top of that spring. But this is a 22 Heritage Rough Rider, and it doesn't have the little wheel. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take the grips off, which is just held on by this one screw. And, you know, if you own these and you shoot them a lot, you will take these apart many, many times. So there we have the grips come off. Now here is what gives some people problems. And the reason why this is having a light hammer strike is you can see how this spring right here is bent. And it's bent right up inside here and sits underneath your hammer that makes contact on it. Now, there's a fulcrum point on here where every time you cock it, your hammer is pushing down on that spring. And over time, the metal is reshaping itself from the original strength it had to now it's more flexed. And therefore, it's not giving enough push on the hammer to send the hammer forward and strike on your round. And that's why I'm getting weak rounds or light hammer strikes, misfires. You can also get a partial misfire and you end up with a squib where the bullet goes part way up your barrel and gets stuck. And if you shoot another one behind it, that one will either get stuck or you will split your barrel and you can possibly injure yourself, lose your eyesight. So whenever you have a squib, you need to pay attention. When something is different when you're shooting a firearm, just stop. Stop shooting. Shooting again isn't going to fix it. So it's very dangerous, especially with a higher powered caliber pistol like a 357 or a 44 Magnum. You could get killed. Okay, this is very serious stuff. So anyway, we have this part right here, and this is the pin that goes into the hole on the grip right there. There's one on each side. This one has one as well, right there. And you can take this pin right out, like that. And it's just a little pin. And again, they sell these parts on the Heritage Rough Rider site. And probably not going to be able to take this out by hand. Nope. So I'm going to need my block, and I'm going to have to knock this out. So we will do that. And this is just really fun stuff to do. This is where I could do all this fancy editing and this and that and blah, 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 blah. But what we're going to do is we're going to take this, move this aside a little bit, and get yourself a little gunsmithing block like this. You can do different things with it. And what's good about it is these holes for doing things like knocking things out of it. And I don't know how much this is going to help me with this, because I need some leverage, and I have a punch, which I can use for this. You can use a wood dowel if it's small enough to fit on here. You could use anything like that, and I don't know how well this is going to work, but we're going to try this anyway. And I'm trying to avoid stopping recording. I don't know if I will succeed or not. And I can tell this is the way it went in, because there's actually a lip to work with here. And that almost had it. A little bit more. So what I'm going to do is take this out, and then I'm going to flex it back. And that way I can then put it back in, and it should reinstate this is going to cause me a problem, folks. And it should reinstate exactly what I'm trying to do with getting this done and fixed. So there we go. This might work. There we go. So we knocked that out, and that is the hammer spring, which again they sell on the website. Now, after I flex this back, I am literally just going to take this and I'm going to flex this by hand. And if I go a little too far, that's okay too, because as I put it together, I'll know. And the worst case scenario is the hammer is going to hit harder than it did before, and that's not a loss either. And it won't be by much. So I just want to give a little bit of life left back to this spring, instead of just throwing it away and putting a new one, basically. And these are only like $5, I think, on their website. And I believe you also get this little pin that you need with it also that goes through here as one unit. So I hope this video helps somebody out. If they're having a light hammer strike problem, this is probably what your problem is. Once you get past whether or not it's the firing pin. And doing the firing pin's a lot more difficult than doing this, so I would probably recommend just doing this first, because my personal opinion is 70% of the time when you get a light hammer strike with a single action revolver, it's going to be this spring. So all of this is old technology, metal fatigue. The best you can do is buy better quality hardened steel parts so they last longer. Wolf Springs has a lot of stuff, but I really haven't seen too many people making springs for the Heritage Rough Rider, because everything is scaled down smaller. Like this Sear spring on a regular single action revolver is almost twice, or at least a third bigger than this. So nothing, you can't like get something that's for you birdie and make it work in this. It's this size. So, you know, Wolf Springs is a good website. I don't think they have Heritage Rough Rider springs and parts on it though. But Heritage Rough Rider's website does get stuff shipped pretty quickly. and it's not very expensive. Their shipping is about $8 and something cents if you buy one item. And if you're there to buy, 10 different parts, the shipping it's easy. It's not a big deal. It's not very expensive, and the parts will work. So, like, this cylinder is starting to get old and worn. I don't know how much life is left in it with regard to size of the chambering. If we start getting a loose fit and it gets real sloppy and I'm having problems, especially with the edges, with hammer strikes. So what I might do is just cannibalize this newer cylinder. Plus I have actually an extra new cylinder, 22LR. And of course we have the 22WMR Magnum cylinders, and I have a couple of those as well. So I can do whatever I want with that. And I think I might put this newer cylinder and replace this one. I just hate to do that because you see how worn and patinaed this is. And I like how that looks. It matches the rest of the gun, and you put a brand new cylinder in it and it sticks out like a sore thumb when this is all worn. But anyway, that'll conclude this video. I hope this helps somebody out if you're stuck. And this is all pretty basic. You own these style of revolvers and you shoot them for any amount of time at all. They're all going to need servicing. You are going to have to learn how to do this. This will become something you probably do a couple times a year, whether it's replacing springs, if you go shooting every weekend like we do. So with that, thank you very much for watching, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Click like, and I'm not monetized. So I'm not making money off it, but I don't throw ads in your face, and I also don't have a big 2-minute intro video to waste everybody's time. I just come on here and do what needs to be done. And if you like custom grips like this, the Heritage website also has plenty to choose from, and they're affordable, and they're pretty. These are nice and broken in, and look how beautiful that is. They're all hand-worn. So until next time, thank you for watching. Keep shooting. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye. Have a nice day.